Hi, good night, everybody. My name is Carl Maxwell. I'm here to introduce one of the most amazing factors I have ever met within the sports therapy industry. She's an amazing woman. She's a former national athlete and also created a career in sports therapy, sports medicine in that field. She has also played a pinnacle role in multiple Olympians um, former Olympians, current Olympians, their entire role in the sports. She's helped many athletes. The best way to do this is basically to let her introduce herself. I bring to you one person who's a friend, who has been a backbone for me, a backbone for many. I bring to you Chalise Jordan, our former national representative, or current one of our current sports therapy personnel. Chalise?
Hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, Barbados Athletes Commission, for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Even before we begin, Kyle, I just want to say one thing is I want to express condolences to the families who've lost members to COVID, and also want to give my prayers and encouragement for those healthcare professionals out there fighting a fight that we know is rough. So I just want to take that time out uh, to mention them before we continue. Thank you.
I, I, I concur. I extend my condolences as well to all of those persons who are experiencing that unfortunate situation, those deaths, those sicknesses that are happening, especially with a lot of loved ones and friends out there. Shalise, over to you. Tell me a bit about yourself, Shalise. Tell me about how did you get into the field of badminton? I mean, you are a former national representative. A lot of persons are not really aware of your role that you played in the badminton sport. I mean, introduce yourself as a former badminton player first. Let's go.
So I appreciate that. I'm going to age myself here, but at least to give them that side of me. I first got introduced when I went to commerce school, so in first form, and through one of my brother's friends who at the time went to school there, Donna, and we didn't have tennis courts available, so she's like, "Come try badminton," and I've never played badminton in my life, and I fell in love with the sport immediately. And we had NSC coaches that would come, to the school and to teach us, and that's where it started. And the journey to national representation or national selection and took where I took a lot of loves. In badminton, we call when you get zero or beaten zero, we call it loves. So I took a lot of loves in the beginning until I decided that you know what, I don't want to lose anymore. I don't want to be beaten. And I had a neighbor who was also a national player before at that time, and from St. James Secondary, Dwight. And they were the dominant school at that time. And I remember coming home, and every day I trained. I just extra training. I remember burpees. It's a while back, folks. I don't want to age myself, but I remember, training extra. And by the time nationals came around, that's when I was able to win. I win what we'd call triple queen, which is like singles, doubles, and mix. And thankfully and luckily, I hadn't. When I left the sport, I was undefeated. So I respect that. And I spent about 12 years playing for the country. So that was my introduction to badminton, and then a little bit on how it's a little bit more how we got to national, and we can discuss that. But that's how it started. And
Well,
me getting
that's
hit hard badly, and just deciding this was it, and I'm not going to have it anymore, and had to put in extra work, and that's where it started.
that's pretty much how all majority of us tend to start. I mean, that spark of losing, then you get
Yeah,
frustrated with it. You get to the point where you say that's enough, that's enough.
it
But
was.
yes, how about your national career? Let's say I know you went to various games. You participated at those games, and as you have said, you actually were crowned the triple crown. Tell us a bit about that.
So triple crown again is when you win in badminton. You have singles and then you have doubles, then you have mixed doubles. So if you win all three, you kind of get that title.
Sure.
My segue into the career, I'll tell you this: I searched hard, I really did, Kyle. And for anyone who's logged on, I wanted you to see this because I know people may have know me from career wise, but may not understand uh, what drove me behind. And there was one tour I
Mhm.
want to share. One story is that um, it was we were 14. I say we because my doubles partner, myself, Dion Ford, who's now Dion Haynes, Kurt Prasad, Coach Paul Seeley. We went to Pan Am Juniors in Cuba, and we played two categories. So we played under 16 and under 19.
Yeah.
And in badminton, you have individuals and then you have team tournament. And in the team tournament, obviously with three people, we had to make sure we won three people. We won three out of five.
Yeah.
So I get to the point where we had beaten several people, so we were in a position that we are going to be gold medalists. And this is where I'm going to explain. I don't have a picture, so I'm going to try and paint it really for you. So at the end of
Mhm.
it, I strained my quad, and we're in Cuba, so it's Spanish speaking. Basically, they told the coach, in however you understood that, I strained it and I was not able to continue. We had to default four finals, and
Oh, wow.
I didn't. There are pictures where, and I know people may say it was not necessary. It's not about sportsmanship. We were still 14, 15, and we had to keep. I know my head was down when I was on the podium. We were crying because at that point it was poignant for to try to get badminton on the radar for Barbados, and then if you get a medal at Pan Am, you would have done that. And we were both head down crying, and that one incident I want to share, Kyle, taught me many things. Taught me one, that you could be number one today and number two the next day, whether by incident, by injury.
Yeah.
And so you never take number one for granted. The second thing is, and this people may not know, is that was the first time we'd gotten um, team uniforms. And it was lavender and pink and Yonex. So we were happy with Yonex and stuff, but I want you to understand being on a podium and potentially having the opportunity, maybe, to hear your anthem, and you're wearing obviously colors that are not Barbados colors. So this is
Yeah.
where I'm very patriotic about it, and I love my country, and it's very important. I take the colors very seriously when I have
Yeah.
national duty. The third thing where you've asked me, I know I'm going on, but this was the part that I think only when I reflected years on why I chose the field was because of my one injury. I then affected my partner, Dion.
Oh,
Because obviously, if I'm hurt, we default. That meant she could not play. So then I
yeah.
also affected somebody else's opportunity and potential medal at Pan Am level. So though that injury, and then when I made that year was Commonwealth, I was 14 as well, and the injury recurred. Yeah, that really drove home for me that I don't want ever, I don't want to have anybody, especially kids, children, anyone ever to have to experience injuries that will stop them from reaching a certain performance or even having the opportunity to platform. So that was where it began. So I knew very early what I wanted to do. So initially it was physiotherapy. I started my hours at the QEH and then privately, and then as you go higher, as you know, being an Olympian, things become
Yes.
more technical. It's not just
Yeah.
physical now. So then I learned about kinesiology, and then I learned about athletic therapy, which is in Canada, which is like
Yeah.
athletic trainer in USA, sport therapist in the UK. So that's how where my drive came, because on the inside I just never wanted anyone to have to go through that aspect. Um, so that's how I chose my career.
That's 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 exactly. I mean, we had previous discussion because we were, like for instance, we were inside the 2012 Olympics together, where we shared a bit of the experiences with one another, etc. How would you say? Actually, how long would you say you've been doing it? in your career?
So I started or graduated about 2004. Then I recognize, and I'll mention it here, is I realized coming home, kinesiology, athletic therapy is very new. And even when I'd volunteer, I would sense that it being new, it had the sense of resistance. So that's when I chose to study as well massage therapy. So I did therapeutic massage and then sports massage to give me more well-rounded and to make sure that I had the scope that was necessary to treat and have access to that. In terms of the journey to Olympics, it is a story, I will tell you, but it must start always first from the opportunity from the junior level. I volunteered a lot to get experience and obviously to expose people to what athletic therapy was. I was very naive when before, returning, I really wanted or thought it was going to be about collaboration and what we want best for our Bajan athletes and how to get them to on a podium and get them level. So it
Yeah.
really started Comamere where I was able, and I'll really take it back there. Miss Wason and Miss Dotton, their PE teachers, I have great respect, and I must make mention because he supported the sport all the way through. But what was different was obviously I'm not trained now. I have to say this, Kyle. I know I'm backtracking, but he allowed me. I remember in my last year, I was like, "Sir, can I massage the athletes or stretch them and stuff?" So I had been able to at least start even before leaving. So when I came home and I volunteered with different sports, um, I volunteered with, BSAT with Comamere, and then I was introduced to, Mr. Wason and then Mr. Bob, and then worked with Savon, and then had the opportunity in 2009 to go to Carifta. And that was my national selection in terms of working. So from there, working with some of the athletes, Ramon Gittins, Dario, Ryan, and Shane. So that's where it kind of started and then meshed. And this is one, I have to share this story. I hope I'm not going on, but it's I have to, is that
That's that's
the
fine.
story is not my career. I'll be honest with the listeners. It was not a pure linear. I don't think many people are. It was, with many rocks in the way, but I'll explain it later. But Ramon Gittins was, and his family were very kind. Ramon was at the time at St. Aug in the U.S. College. He graduated, so he invited me to come up. His partner was Barbie, and she had run for USA, so he asked me to come up for Penn Relays. So their coach was a gentleman called George Williams. He's a very legendary person for USA track and field, Olympian coach there. So he allowed me to work with Sinog at Penn Relays. And that's where, and this is where it really started. I met, we call him Batman. He was 400-meter hurdler for USA, and Bershon Jackson. And working with Bershon in 2012. And then after Penn Relays, Bershon asked me, and I went, stayed with his family and helped him in preparation for some of his meets. So that then laid when Ryan had already, we missed out even 2009 Ryan's medal in
Yeah.
terms of gold medalist.
Yeah, the
Um,
World Championships.
at the World Championships in 2009, which is very, historic, and also, coming off of, we have to mention Obadele Thompson for, his bronze medal and his performance in Olympics. So for me, after Ryan, it was important. He had a rough 2011, and then, as I said, his manager came and met me and asked if I was going to 2012, and I didn't really answer. You know me, I am a bit reserved. So Ryan said no,
Yeah.
I'm not selected, and so then basically the manager asked for me to go privately for Ryan, and that's how it started in terms of that. And then while at the same time, just before I had the opportunity and privilege to represent the Athletics Association of Barbados at World Juniors, that was in Spain. And then the manager called and asked if I could come to the training camp, because usually normally they would have a pre-training camp.
Yeah.
So obviously I was like, I'm in Spain and I'll be getting home at a certain time. So I turned over, and then I went straight to Austria. I met Ryan, And that's how 2012 occurred in terms
Yeah.
of getting there.
I I
But
I, I vividly remember 2012 and that coming leading up to 2012 and then after 2012 with the Commonwealth. I mean, I know you had some challenges as well. I know the various challenges you've had. I know that it's not smooth sailing to get where you are or where you want to be in terms of your career. So, what would you say in terms of to anybody who is looking to go into this field or even any other field as it relates to their goal, their mindset as a career after they do this first? What would you say?
so one of the things is anytime I have the opportunity to speak about career or schooling is one, you must know yourself a bit into what's your likes, dislikes, what's your passion, what's your love. And the second thing I drive home is I usually, have a pictorial, is that my journey may be different to yours. Mine might be winding, yours might be straight. Everybody's journey is different. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. So the first two things are to understand when you're choosing. And once you've figured out yourself and what you like, dislike, your passion, then you want to go after people you see that are in the field, and you have the opportunity to ask them if you can shadow. So shadow is like volunteering, or doing an internship. And I explain sometimes to people, my first year at university, I did a degree in kin, and then you did athletic therapy, Kyle. Like the first year, so you had your first responder, you had your taping skills, but that first year
Yeah.
you didn't treat anybody. You didn't touch them aside for if you taped or if you stretch. So it's about folding towels, making ice packs, and then by the second year you start assessing. So it's a progression, but the key is it's really finding a way of whoever is in that area, because you want to be exposed in any field, whether it's my field, I will go into that specifically in a minute. But any field that you want to get involved in, you contact those people and ask if it's possible to shadow, if it's possible to do internship, so you can see and get a feel for it. Because for me, that was a differentiation when I did my hours at the QEH and with private physio, and then as I learned and went into kin, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I did not necessarily want. So that's those are the couple of key points I would say. You mentioned my challenges or challenges, so I kind of put it because I knew I was as fancy Akila and as Alex as well, but so I will put it in three ways, three terms, three B's. I put it. Um, Blind spots, blockages, and miscellaneous, or if you want, for those who are adult, maybe looking for a change of career, BS. So for me, the blind spots are ones where you don't even see it coming. And
Yeah.
this is after now. So there's pre-career, which is what I advise it, I hope I'm giving just now. And then when you're in the career, or even there are blind spots where there are things that you don't see coming, or whether people say things, whether people have done things and you don't even see it. So you need to be aware or have people to talk to. This is where mentorship and or working with someone. And that was something, Kyle, that I'd always, when I came home and I explained that, I wrote to a number of associations. Obviously, I was a national athlete, so I knew. Uh, you would think I knew the people, but at the time they did not see scope for it in Barbados. So I had to make a decision. If doors close, then you have to open your own door,
Yeah.
and that's
Correct.
where I made a decision to choose. I went into private practice early, and I chose uh, as a location one of the tourist sites because I knew it would not be a hard sell. Because I enjoyed volunteering. I believe in volunteerism, but at the same time, you have student loans, you have bills to pay. My family invested in me, and I can't make it look as I've not made a right decision as a career choice. So, having said that, um, we go to blockages. Blockages, one of those are those, as if maybe it was my timing. Timing is critical, as we know in life.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I don't say it for brownie points. I'm a person of faith, and I took a lot of risk, and I already explained some of the risks in terms of if I take a trip, I have to close my clinic. I went and traveled because, as I said, I never forgot. I think inwardly, I never forgot uh, lavender and purple and having my head down, and I never wanted anyone to experience that, and especially in Barbados when, for me, having gone through national route, and it was driven home, Kyle, for us that we had to win, or I took it like this: we had to win, meaning perform, in order to be taken seriously. And then you
Correct.
get funding. If you get funding, then you can go to more tours, get more exposure. So in my mind,
Correct.
it was very much. It was. There's no doubt. So I always knew the importance, obviously, and wanted to make sure, injury prevention, whatever I had to do, and hope that I could win over some coaches, and be able to have access to work with athletes. And when I say athletes, ladies and gentlemen, I mean all athletes, whether they were table tennis, whether it's hockey, whether it's volleyball, whether it's golf, tennis, or track and field. So that was really, that's the blockages, and blockages are, can be inward. So if you yourself, there are areas you're still a human being, and I told you, as a person of faith, I've had my times where I've been of little faith, and some things that occur, whether external or intrinsically, whether it's uh, you in life, you have things that may not always go your way. So how do you deal with the disappointments? And they may not be of your cause. How do you deal with health challenges? How do you deal with life challenges? And those may be things that where a hurdle or something you need to overcome. So for me, there are times where I had to, and I always would call, if it's a past elder or certain people I have high respect or regard that have overcome things. I need to talk to them. Even now, I'll say this as at present. So this is a present situation. The
So,
last
so
one, sorry.
go. Just wanted to interject once. So, would you would say then that therefore your support structure plays that pinnacle role in that particular career path that you would like to go in, or even as well in the same sporting arena? You would agree?
100%, because um, you will need, and I think it was Andrea who mentioned networking. Networking is critical. So if you can get to know people in the field and you have the opportunity, go for it. If it's family support, because for me that was important when I returned home, because if you hit many closed doors, you yourself start to doubt if you made right decisions, and you have to have someone there who, if you can't believe at that point in yourself, then they believe that it's the right path. Just stay on it, just stick with it. And that's where I would say I'm, as a person of faith, because there are times that you you do experience highs and you do experience lows depending on your career, and not everyone. This is my personal journey, but it's how you go about it, and if you can get back up and keep fighting. And there are times where you may not. There are times things hit you so hard that you're like, change of direction is needed, and some people change careers, and or change or shift for a time being. So yeah, support structure is always important in anything, and career wise, yes, because the right guidance. And I will say this up front, I'm open book to you, Kyle, and hopefully we get questions, the good, not so good, and the exciting, I'm willing to answer, because uh, support is critical. And if you don't have that can make life easier, and it can make your career a lot easier and able to do what you believe is a calling or you want to enjoy and do this for your life.
Agree. You we made you touched on it basically in relation to you actually going to the 2012 and the 2016 Olympics. Now, I can speak about the 2012 because I was there when you actually worked on myself, Ryan, and all the guys. And also, one person didn't know too is that you actually worked on someone like Justin Gatlin, who was not even part of the Barbados team, but that was because you were private. So, since it's in that instance, would you say was the most pivotal point or pivotal experience that you had in that particular games or in any of the games that actually continue to push you toward where you are now, as well as what support in after the games did you have that kept you where you are going or to the direction in the direction that you are going now?
Um, so before, I have to give thanks to um, Amateur Athletic Association, Coach Bob, and obviously Ryan and his management, because one, the pivotal shift was obviously, and I don't see it for in terms of my achievement. I see it more, yeah, even for Ryan, not only Ryan's, but for the country was his gold medal. And once he did that, then that kind of broke a ceiling where now you had kids. Because I'll be very frank, I'm going to answer your question, Kat. I'll be very frank. When I first returned, and I would ask when I do talks, lectures, I would always ask, how many of you believe to the athletes any discipline? How many of you want to be Olympian? And there weren't many hands. And when Ryan was able to get world championship, and we had Shane as a world junior champion,
Sure.
and you have Akila coming on, then you all of a sudden you have it's not realistic, it's not reality. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of having the opportunity to work with Justin, I have Justin in very high regard because yes, I went privately, so it meant in for those who go on tour privately, you don't have the same access and luxury, and when I say luxury, in terms of accreditation. And
Yeah.
2012 Olympics, London Olympics, was one of the most secure Olympics ever. So
Yeah.
it was challenging, and because you had to go separate area, then get shuttled to the warm up area, and then I'd be able to meet the athletes. And then depending on the Olympic Association, what day they had me, then I'd be able to have access into the arena in the Games Village. Sorry. So with coming to meet Justin and being able to work with Justin is Ryan's coach or group. Justin was part of that. So when I went to the training camp, Justin's physio hadn't arrived, and Ryan and no one was there. Ryan asked, and a coach asked if it would be okay. And obviously, I would be happy, to help once Ryan was fine with it because I was there for him initially. And so I was able to start working with, help them out after training. So it was Justin Gatlin, Kelly Wells, Charandi, Martina, I'm going to forget his name, Salim from Nigeria. And so I just continued. And Justin was kind enough, or I would say that, or even when I would work with Barbados and he would be there, and I worked with him throughout his Olympics, in terms of 100-meter and the 4x1. And that was how I was able to, well, before that, meet Justin and then work with Justin.
Okay. Just want to check and see if there are any questions right now. Actually, I think we have a few questions from the audience. What is your biggest transition from being an athletic trainer to a business owner? That's from Jace Mears. Jace Mears.
Yeah, so I know JC. So it was a big transition because I was, to be very frank, coming as an athlete, I was very naive. I was very idealistic. So I just knew when after I'd done my training and written a Canadian board exam for athletic therapy, I just wanted to come home. So I was not as wide-eyed and business savvy. And as you would hear, I took a lot of risk with my business. So the transition becoming a business owner, I had to do two things. I am shy or reserved, so I went and tried to learn communication skills. I did marketing course. I did try to learn as much from the business end because at that point then I had to be. And I'll share this. When I first started, my brother actually was into massage, so he gave me his bed. I had no funding, obviously, for equipment. My family gave me a loan for my first month's rent. Literally, that's how it started. So to make that transition, it was not easy because if I did not, you're trained in skills, which is the practical skills, then you have to be trained in terms of how to handle business, how to market yourself, and how to sell yourself. And even to this day, it's still a challenge, still learning, even now with social media. So the transition initially was very difficult, but I did a course. I give thanks to Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme. I went there to learn, how to do books, how to do certain things. And yes, I was exposed university wise, but then having to come home and in the environment I was in, Kyle, I have to say it was a lot to hustle and to juggle. So I had to make sure that I was educated and informed as best I could on the field of business. So for me, JC, hopefully I answered this. Is one. It was not an easy transition because I had not envisioned the business part component. I was still in an ideal world.
Okay, understood. Just another one actually. In relation to your sporting career, what would you say you took from your sporting career into your business, or rather the business venture that you went along?
I took a lot, and I mean it when I do say if I appreciate teachers, and I have great respect for my PE teachers and all PE teachers. You guys have a role you will never really understand how much influence you do have. So I learned, say, Mr. Wilson, obviously he's a former Olympian, and him just coming, as I said, to some of our meets when as a school we'd compete, showing that we were important. But when my coach, I have to say, obviously, Paul Seeley, Mervyn Gordon, these are people who wanted Bamman to go a certain way. So discipline. I learned values from my PE teacher, Miss Dotton. She's very principled, very valued. So there are things that you learn, and badminton, it's about sportsmanship, um, making sure you have integrity in terms of, you can't cheat, you have to play a certain way, not display anger. So there's a lot. I hope I'm not showing, but most of all, and this is one of the challenges, is that I became very, after losing, you don't want to lose again. So it was all or none. I was an all or none type of person, and I took that into business. And this was something, JC, I learned, and I'll explain. This is where it got me in trouble because in all or none in my profession and with some of the things, not everybody's the same. So I will just say this is my story. All or none, I was just going, working, and I never took vacations. I would just work, and then you'd have so work for a season, then you'd have where you'd prepare with the athletes, and if I got selected for national duty, I'd be away. And I did that for like 9 years, no vacation, and I had several burnouts. And for athletes who may be listening, I think you understand burnout from when you overtrain and then you get injured or you start to break down. And I started to break down. And once you start to break down and I'm supposed to take care of others, it's not a good place. And that then affected. So I learned good things, and then I had to, even though I'm a therapist, I should know about recovery and know about certain things. I was still in denial. I was still keep trying to go and go and go, even though I couldn't. And you can't do that because it's about reliability, consistency, and the same way when you have a commitment. So those were things that allowed me to transition and allowed me to get the opportunities, hopefully, and have stayed there and be able to have opportunities to work with Justin, opportunities to work with our own national athletes, golfers, professional tennis players.
Okay. One quick thing in relation to your business now, actually, we're going to the business side now. What would you say what would you say is the pinnacle aspect of your business that keeps you motivated? I know
Okay.
you said before that it was the whole ritual of making sure your person or the people you work on do not go through the same things that you or one of your fellow athletes have gone through before. But as you get older, things that feeling tends to subside as sometimes. So what would you say is the main push for you at this point in time in relation to the business side now?
And I
Right now.
realize, yeah. So right now, um, to be honest, it's faith in the sense that yes, there's Pinnacle to reach one to work with national athletes junior. I love children. I love adolescents in terms of working with them. Uh, to be able to go world championships, obviously 2012, and to be able to work with Justin Gatlin at his when he went Diamond League, those were marks that would keep me going and sustaining. Like you're on the right path. No matter what's going on, no matter what people say, you're on the right path. You chose the right career. In terms of now, we're having a little bit more mature and older. It still is that desire to make sure, because I always see sport and performance as a platform. So Kyle, I will never go away from that. So I will always have that from the child or adolescence or any young youth sport position. But in terms of now, is really when you're my age, without giving any indication, you're in a different frame of life. And for people, whether it is married, whether you have children, whether it is now aging family, and even now in this particular pandemic or situation, this is new. You have to adapt. Is knowing that being an all or none had got me to a certain point. Kyle, I have to say this, and then it also. When you're so tunnel vision at one point, then there are things you neglected, or things that were not taken care of, like family situations. So certain things are like high priority for me. Health, my own health, my family, my parents, and those things drive me, because obviously now as they age, I want to be in a position to take care of them. My niece, or even also, it's something I take seriously. I like teaching, so if there are other people under coming through, is to make sure that in Barbados, or even for them, that they have that opportunity, and not only see Barbados as the scope, but if they want to go on in their careers, to go on. So those, if I don't know, I hope I answered it and I didn't ramble there, Kyle. But that's what drives me now, today,
Okay,
October
so
13th.
what advice would you give, let's say the last athlete that came home from the last Olympics 2020, and let's say someone retired and they're looking to go into establishing themselves within their business now. What would be your tips or tricks as it relates to going into that aspect now?
So when you're coming out of, say, you're transitioning from maybe retirement, I think even before, sometimes retirement is unplanned. Sometimes it can be planned, but the point is, that you have a love or some area you want to go in. It still stays with those three Bs. So make sure you know your blind spots, blockages, and the BS. Be aware. BS is the politics, the system, what you're working, the environment. But really,
Yeah.
coming back down to what you really want to do, you have to network, you have to get to know, and don't be afraid to volunteer. I know these times are tough, and I'm saying it's broad, so I'm saying it with any healthcare field and outside of the healthcare field, because you could be a statistician, you could be an analyst, you could be a biomechanist in terms of sports. So you don't need necessarily always to touch someone, but being aware of what you want and line up, contact those people and find a way to keep linkages. If it's in Barbados, and if there's no chance in Barbados, then you find someone overseas, and hopefully, you ask questions, and don't be afraid to volunteer. Don't be afraid. I use this. I worked on my family a lot. I thank Mr. Eisen. I worked on school when I was still in school. I was even a professional. Not that I driving at home now, it would be different with liability and scope. But do whatever you have to do in terms of go after it. And Andrea said network. I know JC would have mentioned, she does a lot of talking about it in terms of create a tribe. If you have a person who you studied with or has the same thinking, then you can even buddy up and try to go into the field together. And that's easier than being a lone wolf or a sole person. So that would be hopefully, post-career, athletic career.
Okay. Okay, we're going to one of the questions. I have Tanya Viggins, sorry. How do you balance your give back to athletes and the focus on keeping your business viable and sustainable? I hope I said that lady's name properly. But
Uh,
Etania, I think that's what it is. Etania Wiggins. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can only speak on my behalf, Titania, and this is where I explain. I will share the good, the not so good. Is that I do wear my heart on my sleeve sometimes, so I want to give back, whether it is through treatment, I give back, I check in on whether I'm not immediately taking care of them. I try to check in on them. My business is active care, deliberately, active care therapy, action for a reason. And so the give back is in any of those areas. If there's tangible way I can give back, and it depends on the particular uh, athlete's needs, or that's how I give back. Now, the business part to make it sustainable, um, that is a challenge. As I said, is a challenge in a way when you wear your heart on your sleeve. But at the end of the day, you have to know I have bills, I have a family, and to make sure that if there are clients that you know that are not able to afford, but you have clients that can afford, then there's kind of a balance there where you can say, okay, this amount I can do for free, and that's the limit. It doesn't always work out like that for me in my personal life, but that's how it is. Making it viable is you're always doing that, especially now in pandemic. Uh, this arena, I like the name that we're dealing with. You have to try to stay current in terms of keeping yourself sustainable and the business marketable, and people want to see you.
That
I
that's
hope I
actually where that's actually where I was actually going to ask you to go into, in relation to the pandemic that's currently with us. We are pretty much in the midst of that pandemic as we have some rising numbers at this point in time. How would you say, or what would you say to those individuals who just started a business or someone who's about to start a business? What advice would you give those individuals at this time as it relates to pushing forward and going towards their goals and are keeping their goals in mind despite the pandemic that's going on right now?
I think we express the seriousness of it, but I think also the COVID has allowed a serious entrepreneurial spirit in people, a serious innovative spirit. So for me, I was a risk taker in terms of business decisions, leaving my practice and working, but going overseas to further myself, however. So this is a time that if you want to really push ahead, this is a time. This is a time you can take. If you cannot afford doing courses, they're offering free courses. Even right now with Arena, they have the Career 246, self discovery. Find ways where you can educate without putting a burden on yourself financially. And wherever you can, internet, read up on different things. And there's somewhere, some businesses, some people have already. I loved what Akilam said, and I must make mention because I didn't learn this. I didn't learn that lesson when I could have. Is that your career, even though it might be for some a calling, a mission, not that it's a job, but there must be other things that you balance. So for her, it's her creative side, and she came up with that part of her being a business. So the advice I would give is always try to reflect on yourself. What are my gifts, or what do people, if you don't know if it's a gift, what do people always want me to do? Is it they like how I do makeup, they like how I do wear their hair, do they like how I do their nails, do they like how I work on cars, whatever it is, that could be a calling. And find yourself, do they like my food if I'm a good chef, and do they like my shakes if it's smoothie and it's healthy. And once you find that, and that's the direction you want to go, and you try to read as much evidence-based information, legitimate information or literature, and expose yourself, meaning social media presence. Sorry.
All right, we have a statement here from Miriam Rudder. He said, "Thanks for all the encouragement and inspiration that contributed to my coaching journey, Chalise. I'm forever grateful to you. Hashtag world class therapist."
I can I
Quite
must I must mention Raymond because Raymond is it's unique, and because he's now one of the only, black head coaches in Canada in track and field, and he's at my alumni, which is your university. So I just have to make mention, and thank you for that, Raymond. Thank you.
Yes, I have another one that says from JC Mares, looking great, Chalise, keep rocking your brand.
I try.
um, okay, one other thing, not that she brings up brand though. Would you say that your brand that you have created, right, with me active care therapy as a brand, would you say that you got that skill as making your business a brand in itself from your actual sporting career?
I think
Because
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I don't think I've been as successful in making it a brand because two things. I don't think people would have known me when now you have social media. No, in a serious way, you have social media. You have Instagram. You have all LinkedIn and Facebook. And um, but when that came up, I would have already finished playing badminton. I forgot to mention, yeah, when I, not that I ended my career, but I ruptured my Achilles and I just shifted straight to business. But I don't think I've done as good a job, I'll be honest. And there are a number of reasons, but yeah, that could always be improved. And I would tell people your branding is important. People may know my name more for good or better, but you do the best you can each day. Yeah, every day I try to do my best, and not every day you succeed. Not every day I disappoint people. I may make, I get it right, but you do the best you can, and that I've learned from people like Justin. I've learned from Raymond. I've learned Bob. I learned from my pastor, elder parents. You have to keep going. Whatever you have to do, keep moving forward. And so I'll just say that part I have not mastered yet. To be able to associate active care therapy um, rather than just Shalise Jordan. You know,
Yeah.
I hope.
All right. Just want to take a step away from the discussion at this point. To you folks out there, our audience, tonight we're actually looking to give away one of our 246 shirts in 246. I'm not sure if you can see it, but our shirts. It's not, it may not be like this, but there is a shirt given away. I hope you guys are listening as we'll be asking a question from tonight's discussion. And the first person that gives the correct answer will receive one of our 246 shirts. All right? Back to you, Shalise. Now, what you say, I just wanted to ask you one more question. In relation to those younger athletes, right? I know I actually found some persons have actually started creating a small business as let's say like the teenage athletes creating a small business. Like I know someone who's actually a national athlete who bakes cakes and does other baking around the house and then sells them and to get by sometimes actually. What would be your suggestion as it relates to the managing of the two? Because I mean, some athletes you have persons transitioning into business, and some you have who are actually in business while doing the same national um, their national duties. So, what would be your advice to those persons?
I think is excellent, and I think that the times we live in terms of social media presence is that you can bank on both of them, and especially the teenagers, the millennials, and then under, for sure take advantage. So if you are a national athlete and you will always, as young, people are into YouTube, they're into Instagram, then you can show your sporting skills and your prowess, and show your cakes and show the different designs you make and the type of cakes or pastries. And when you can mesh them, they're going to automatically, if they like you and they see that you've done well, they'll automatically think you bring the same to cakes and they'll try. You just need them to try. And if they try at least once, and hopefully you can be consistent and it tastes good, that's great. So as a teenager, I think it's excellent. Get out there, try it. because this is a time, as you know, it's going to be rough for many people, parents and all. And if that person at that such young age has already found their calling in terms of baking, or potentially a chef, a pastry chef, go for it and use social media. I don't know if I'm given the ideal advice, but that's the best way. And people have found that even without a business place and you're still at school, they'll find your name and you can start making cakes. I do know of one a teenager who started like that as well. So that would be my advice.
Okay, that's good. Just in closing, Shalise, anything you want to say to anyone out there, any one of our listeners, any one of our viewers, before we get to the question?
Um, I am. I want to. I must say, I'm very, in spite, as I mentioned, there are times I'm of faith and there are times I'm of faith. I'm very thankful that, regardless of the three B's I explained, and sometimes it was rocky in my career in terms of being in Barbados and trying to push athletic therapy or push uh, massage therapy or in anything, is that I have to give thanks to God. I have to give thanks for sure for my parents and my family, and those who stood by me. That's one of the main things. I want to say thank you to the Barbados Athletes Commission for giving me the opportunity to share my story and journey. As I said, I don't do it often, and it is a pleasure. So I take my profession as a privilege, to be able to help people. Yes, out of injury, but now you made mention it's out of pain. So whether they're older folks now, is being able to get them back to quality of life. I don't take it for granted, in spite of whether my own personal challenges or other challenges, as you just take one day at a time and do your best. So that's all I can say at this point, Kyle, and
Oh,
thank you.
all right, thank you. It was a pleasure having chat with a friend, a longtime friend. Let's see. One question for the audience. What what are the 2 years, two Olympics that Chalise went to, which had those pinnacle or those pivotal times that took her journey from where it was to where it is now? What two Olympic game years? Let's see who can get that one. So Shalise, what is it for you going forward now? Is it that you're going to be looking to go and broaden your brand? I mean, put your brand more out there, or what would be your next step right now, or that you're focusing on?
What I did mention is I'm in the process, and I'd started my master's during the pandemic. So it's really want to finish my research in physical literacy and looking at the physical education curriculum, and focusing on work and my health, my family, my parents, and it has a different focus. If I get selected, that's excellent. It's always a privilege to do national duty, so it's not only performance for me now. So this is where I'll go with Tequila on being able to balance the career and then the passions. So the other hobby parts. So in terms of education, will always be for me, life learning. Being a part of a multidisciplinary team, that is a goal. And keeping in touch where you can now look forward to people who are coming up. So the same teenagers or anyone who I can help in any way. And also for myself, stabilize my own brand. And everyone has to ride through the pandemic, and what I can learn and keep current and keep relevant and keep the standard that I want in terms of any athletes that return home, that they can, whether it's athletes or executives, because they're just as competitive. So any client or patient is to make sure I can give the best care I can when I can. That's the direction I'm at right now.
Okay, there's actually a couple other questions, but before we get to those questions, I think I saw Itanya to be the first person who answered correctly. It was indeed 2012 and 2016. 2012 was in London, and 2016, if you remember, was Brazil.
Rio,
That
yes.
was the Rio.
Yeah.
Yes. Right, so to you, Itanya, we will get in contact with you as it relates to the shirt. However, Itanya also had one more question. Did you have to rebrand during the sport pause created by the pandemic?
So there are there's, I'm always thinking. So I remember one of the things is a blind spot. So I have to make sure I talk to people who know me and make sure that I'm interpreting or if the direction is right and I'm not seeing things correctly. So in terms of the pause or during the pandemic, I was still in school and dealing with school and had to look at the business. So rebranding in terms of where and how I wanted to go with any new knowledge I just gained and with what direction I wanted to take, yes, I did. And in terms of in the works, and hopefully will be coming. So I did spend a time in a lot of reflection, in spite of having to work with school and also obviously you have to keep the business viable. So there were things that I looked at inwardly. I'm still working on because that's where it starts in this type of field. And at the moment, at the point with your sole practitioner, or even within working with other people and collaborating. So it was something I had to think about and put on paper and put in place. But I had to. I'm mentioning it, Tanya, that I had to. Uh, School kind of took precedent. I sacrificed. Um, I did make sacrifice, and you have some consequences to that because I put school first at that time. Sorry, Kyle.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thanks.
Um, I
Thank you.
just saw one person said beautiful, beautiful story. And then there was Akita Jones who said, we salute you, Chalise.
Tequila.
So you have indeed touched many of our young and upcoming and current athletes. You can, I will always say, continue to perform your miracles, Chalise, because you performed one with me. And continue to do what you're doing. You're doing an excellent job. Um, as it relates to tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow we have Katerina Bitore. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly.
Yeah.
Katerina Bitore, founder of XOXO Sports. Tomorrow, 14th of October at 6:30. Tune in just on the Facebook Live on YouTube for that. Uh, the area, the arena, sorry, 246. Just join us tomorrow, Thursday. That's again. Join us tomorrow, Thursday, October 14th at 6:30 for a presentation on athlete branding and sponsorship. All right. Thank
Guys,
you again.
definitely tune in to Katarina. Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Have a wonderful day, guys. Stay tuned tomorrow. We will have another session, and I trust it will be just as good or even better as it goes along and throughout the week. I mean, it's been amazing to be here with you, Shalise, and I look forward to our continued contact.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you, Virus Olympic Association, Arena 246. Guys, tune in, each of them. And what I missed, look, Katrina is going to speak on branding and sponsorship. So that's key in sports in terms of a career and business, what JC asked earlier. So I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.